Please be seated. Thank you, Dr. Ikembwe, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission for Namibia, Namibia Electoral Commission. Your Excellency, Dr. Nangolo Mbumba, President of the Republic of Namibia, the commissioners present here, Comrade Sophia Nangu Shaningwa, Swapo Party Secretary General, may I also ask to stand on the protocol as established. First and foremost, as I stand here to receive this 2024 Presidential and National Assembly elections, I would like, on behalf of the Swapo Party leadership, members, Swapo supporters and sympathizers, to thank the Namibian people for once again having shown their confidence and trust on the Swapo Party to continue providing guidance on our developmental agenda and on the strengthening of our institution. I would also like to thank the Namibian people who have shown their love of their country by ensuring that peace and stability continue to prevail in our country, particularly during the campaign and throughout the process of our elections. I would also like to thank the commissioners under your leadership, chairperson, for having finalized the process that we are here today to receive the results. As I'm accepting this result, I would say once again on behalf of the Swapo Party, the Namibian nation has voted for peace and stability. You have voted for unity in diversity, natural resources beneficiation, and youth empowerment for sustainable development. And this we will do through economic transformation. It was in the same room in 2019 when our third president, our late Dr. Hage Geingob, may his soul rest in eternal peace, when he stood here and he said, "We Namibians, we heard you." Today I'm saying to the Namibian people, as we have been telling you throughout the campaign, for us in the Swapo Party and the team that I'm going to lead, we have made commitments, and I'm saying to you, we are going to do what we have told you. Thank you for your trust and confidence on us. Thank you very much.
Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, President-elect and poised to be Namibia's 5th president in its history, in her acceptance speech there, following the final results announcement as announced by the Electoral Commission of Namibia. Of course, the major highlights there from the just concluded elections. We also saw that is the Popular Democratic Movement losing its title of official opposition to the Independent Patriots for Change, and also the affirmative repositioning making its mark in the just concluded election. Joining me now for analysis is political analyst, that's Sam Kauapirura. Sam, a very good day to you. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for waking me up very early this morning.
I was just thanking you for being here so early. I mean, last night you were still at the ECN Center.
Until very late, yeah.
Witnessing, of course, the election results announcement. But what a journey it's been. This morning marks exactly a week ago since Namibia hosted its 8th presidential and National Assembly elections. How do you reflect on these elections here?
Well, obviously, I think the journey started with some problems. Eventually, the run-up to the elections, political parties were in full swing campaigning. And I think political parties must be commended. They've done a good job.
Yes.
They were campaigning. They were taking out the message to the masses. They were announcing their positions and inspiring the nation to continue believing in a democratic order as our only civic way of either continuity or change, whichever way of the ale you were looking at it. But as soon as the voting started, then obviously problems started creeping in, ranging from both inefficiencies, irregularities, and in some cases, some shambolic management of the election process.
Definitely areas that can be improved on. Looking at last night's results announcement, of course, just before we look at, the President-elect's acceptance speech, we saw, of course, a lot of the political parties chose to stay away from the results announcement. I believe only the affirmative positionings, Job and Panda was present there.
Yeah.
What does this say about the overall conduct of the elections from a political party perspective here?
So this was basically our 8th election since independence, if my memory serves me well, ushering in our 8th republic. And previously there were winners and losers in our elections, and I think at all material times, including at the official announcements of the final results, opposition parties were always present. They voiced their concerns, they raised their concerns. And so on, and issues that they observed not to have gone well. But they did legitimize the process by staying the course.
Yes.
I think last night was quite a change from the norm. To me, it suggests in their perspective, the fundamental flaws in the process and their frustrations with the ECN in the way the elections were either managed or mismanaged. And I think for the credibility of our democracy, I think it's important for us to retain all the key stakeholders in this process, to continue instilling that public trust. Because as soon as some key stakeholders start absenting themselves from some of these public appearances, we start eroding our democracy. Absolutely. Simply because they feel aggrieved and simply because they feel ignored and not taken seriously. So to me, last night was a bit of a deviation. In our 8th election, opposition parties have lost before, but they've always legitimized the process by remaining and staying the course, by accepting defeat, by congratulating the winner. Last night was the first, and I think the ECN needs to ask itself the question, why?
Absolutely. Obviously, do you anticipate this to go to the courts?
Well, we've seen political parties making statements that they have approached their legal teams, that they are preparing a legal battle. A number of our elections have turned out before the courts before. I think with the exception of 1989 and 2014 only, the rest of them have always made their attempts and their stints at the courts. And then it will be for the judiciary then to interpret our laws, to look at judicial precedent, and then to consider whether the issues that are brought before them for ventilation warrant, fundamental nullification of the elections, or whether the courts would overlook that and maybe only reprimand the ECN. That remains to be seen. But the political process, the election is concluded. What remains now is a question of how those who feel disenfranchised are going to handle to take this up with the courts.
Very much indeed. Former First Lady Monica Gingos, in an interview with the SABC's Sophie Mokoena, asked a very interesting question, saying that we should be underscoring or identifying whether this was a people or a process problem. What are your thoughts around that?
So obviously, I can start that by saying, well, we had a 76% turnout. We had young people. I mean, I have 2 teens in my house who voted for the first time. And they were quite excited. There were a lot of young people who went out there and stood in those queues, sustaining the scorching sun. The elderly were brought in, so people went. I think, to me, it seemed to have been a people problem, because systems are designed and planned and managed by people. And I mean, the ASEAN has run elections before. Those elections had issues. A lot of them were found not to be negating the outcome. This election was quite salient in the sense that the ASEAN was getting the basics wrong from the beginning. So to me, I would ascribe it more to a people leadership management problem. A lot of the problems issues or possible challenges which could have been anticipated and avoided through proper planning. And I mean, simple things such as ballot paper management. Yep. Why did people in Windhoek have to wait for hours to get ballot papers? The ACN is right here in town.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you think those problems were big enough to negate these elections?
Well, fortunately, what remains now, the next level that remains now is now the judiciary to pronounce whether it meets the legal standard. All I'm saying is that even for the winner, the ruling party, it has cast a shadow on their victory, which might as well be well-deserved. Now they have to deal with this stigma of, having this election with this big shadow. I think the key lesson here is that a lot of those things could have been avoided with a proper election management from the ECN.
Very much indeed.
Yeah.
For some of the political parties performed perhaps better than they would have anticipated. Do you think, following last night's results, that some of them might have a change of heart looking at these final election results?
Well, I think politics is like watching a soccer match. I sometimes when I get time, I watch football. Yeah. And sometimes you listen to, I almost want to call it these pre-discussions, the people warming up, the perceptions, the views, the excitement, and then people start believing in their own excitement. But then when reality hits, when the moment of truth comes, then the reality is quite different. I kept saying, I repeated it last night on TV, I kept saying, when I looked at the Namibian political landscape, there was nothing substantially different for me that suggested change. People talked about Zambia, the opposition took over. South Africa, we are sitting with a GNU set up. Botswana, the ruling party got their hiding. When I looked at the Namibian political landscape, there was nothing that I could lay my hand on that would shake the ship yet. Yes, there were voices of change. Yes, there are people who are disenfranchised. Yes, our country is facing serious problems that affect the livelihood of our people on a daily basis. A lot of it talk to government action or inaction. Yes. But in terms of the masses, suggesting a political revolution, I could see nothing yet. And I think if these results are anything to go by, we sustain the status quo. But yes, the political establishment made their dent. The AR came in with a big bang. I need to congratulate Professor Mupanda. His campaign strategy was different, pretty much under the radar, pursuing his political discourse, communicating his message, raising issues which resonated, and he collected a good number of votes. I would probably expect him to be a very active party in Parliament. Yeah. But there was something also that I observed last night when the president-elect,
acceptance speech.
Yes, Excellency. When I listened to her acceptance speech live at the ACN Center, so we are done with the elections. The results were announced. What I was looking for in her speech was speaking to the country beyond Swapo. She kept on repeating, thanking Swapo. There was nothing for the country, really, in her acceptance speech. She's president-elect for the country now. And I think her team was supposed to sort of assist her to start addressing the nation, because she's president-elect for the country. Yes. The campaign is over. The partisan politics is over at that platform. More than 5% voters who didn't vote for Swapo voted for her. These people voted for other political parties, but then they voted for her as presidential candidate. And I'm sure last night there wasn't much in her message for them.
Do you think that, that sense of appreciation for the party is perhaps an indication of just how hard they've had to work to bring her up until this point? I think, if you really reflect on the overall campaign of the Swapo Party, what do you make of that? Yes, I think, I certainly agree that, much should have perhaps gone to addressing the nation directly, speaking to the people directly.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was euphoric. This campaign, I mean, Swapo dug deep. They ran a massive campaign. They really put in the work. They put in the effort. There was a lot of messages coming from all over the places. People pretending to threaten their electoral base, their political base, and they had to protect their base. They did very well in terms of managing that campaign. So yes, if maybe one can explain it in a way to say maybe it was still part of the euphoria, but the platform last night was of a different stature. It required a statesman-like approach.
Yep. Yeah, very much indeed.
Yeah.
Of course, she also went back to 2019, mentioning that, in the very same room, President Geingob, the late President Geingob, of course, also said that, Namibians, we hear you, we appreciate the support, etc. And as far as, looking at the track record of Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, of course, a very seasoned politician. She's been part of cabinet since the onset of Namibia. Yeah. She's held a number of portfolio. Even the position she holds right now, what does she really bring to Namibia? Not only that, but also as the first female president of Namibia.
So obviously a lot of experience in the business of government, in the business of the state, more than 30 years, experience. So she, to me, she has the credentials, she has what it takes. I think she also has a relatively good record around her name. She's been there, she's well schooled in Swapo philosophy. Yes. And the business of government. I think the expectation would be very high on her. She made some bold promises during the campaign, trying to obviously counter the rhetoric from the opposition establishment. Like she said last night, to say that the previous president made the remark to say, we have heard you. Yes, Namibians, I hope that she also had the Namibians. 57% of the voters who voted for her. I really hope and believe that she had them and that she would deliver for them. We have serious issues facing these countries, which she can start reversing if she starts, if she puts those promises in place.
Absolutely. Of course, new kid on the block, but also new official opposition on the block now. What do you make of the IPC's performance in as far as these elections are concerned? Have they surpassed themselves as far as expectations are concerned? Yeah.
Well, I think they've had a phenomenal performance. There were a lot of issues, obviously, around, how they were running their campaign, part of the funding and the resources. But that aside, I think it's a phenomenal performance. It's a new party. To come in with a resounding 20 seats in Parliament is huge. It's a question of what they will do with it to sustain that political momentum, to capture that political energy and take it to the next level, to give the ruling party a run for their money. It's a golden opportunity for them. And I think Namibians will be watching them closely. That it's not going to become more of the same, in Parliament, in the opposition establishment.
Very much. Would you say the biggest loser in this election was the Popular Democratic Movement and Makandri Vanani?
Well, clearly they have struggled. 5 years ago, they did well with those 16 seats in Parliament. They lost 11 or so of the 16 seats last year, which is huge. But it's also explainable where those seats went. That's probably where the AR comes in, probably where the IPC comes in. And Swapo also seemed to have gained in some constituencies. It had lost support before. So I think they need to go back to the drawing board to recast the relevance of that party in the Namibian political scheme of things. Obviously, the ruling party is also struggling to get back to two-thirds majority. They keep losing seats. They dropped again seats, 12 seats or so in this parliament. And if they keep on dropping, at some point they will go below the threshold, and they could be forced to either a GNU set up or simply losing the election and become the opposition party. So in as much as they will be celebrating their victory, they also have a lot of work to do to rebuild the support they lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking at the affirmative repositioning, and of course there are 5 seats in Parliament now, what do you make of that composition of Jobo Mpanda, Panduleni Itula, and of course the vibrancy that they may bring to the August House here?
Well, unfortunately, Panduleni Itula is not on the parliamentary list.
Sorry, yes.
On the parliamentary list. That's also quite an interesting situation. I want to see how it develops going forward. But I mean, Dr. Mpanda is a vibrant political scientist. He's a vocal activist. He articulates issues. He's substantive in his approach. Some issues could be controversial. I'm sure one of the first motions he'll be preparing to Parliament is the removal of the red line, which is a big economic question in this country. And so I think, and again, that would put more pressure on the Swapo MPs, because they need to rise to the occasion to counter, the rise of the opposition voice in Parliament. If they become timid, they can get bullied in Parliament. We have seen that in the South African Parliament.
Very much. Interestingly enough, speaking of the Swapo Party, as things stand right now, and looking at the party's list, the submitted list for the National Assembly election, you'd find that certain key figures in cabinet right now, you're looking at the Higher Education Minister, Dr. Ita Kanji Murangi, you're looking at International Relations Minister, Dr. Pea Mushelenga, Mines and Energy Minister, Tom Alwendo. As things stand right now, they would not make it to cabinet.
I think Pea is in, if the last time I checked.
Okay, yeah.
But you are right to say that there's a couple of,
Yes.
of senior cabinet
Yes.
ministers who seem not to have made the cut. It's part of the evolution,
Yeah.
you know, like they say, change is the only constant.
Constant, yes.
They've been around, they've made their contribution 30 years plus for some of them. It's probably time for new blood, time for some new energy. I guess life goes on. They can remain valuable party resources to continue strengthening and motivating the party. It all depends on, you know, how the president-elect would approach it, whether she's going to include them in part of her 8 MPs she can still appoint and still keep in government channels. But I think she has scope. She has scope to consider new blood when I look at that list.
Very much so.
Yeah.
All in all, your final sentiments, how do you reflect on these elections, and of course what you see as the way going forward?
I think the most encouraging thing to me, a key takeout, is really the voter turnout, especially the turnout from the young section of our population. It's very encouraging that our young people continue believing in our country and understanding their civic duty. I'm also very happy that we conducted another round of fairly peaceful, you know, elections, that we continue tolerating each other and continue talking to each other.
Look at what's still happening in Mozambique.
Yes, I mean, look at Mozambique. Mozambique is still reeling from
months after.
Yeah, months, you know, and so forth. So Namibia, again, we retained our political character. We retained our character as a country, as a peace-loving people who can contest, you know, political discourse, and then those who win, those who don't make it, they don't make it, and next time we try again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sam Kauapirura, always a pleasure engaging you. I think you are finally off the hook.
Thank you very much.
NBC analysis.
I can enjoy my holiday now. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the holiday, please. Yes. Thank you for the analysis and spending your time with us here.
Well done, Namibia, and congratulations to the president-elect and to all the political parties and new MPs.
Yeah, very much indeed. There you have it, Sam Kauapirura. He's, of course, political analyst who has been on this journey of coverage with us, bringing you analysis from all corners, all spheres of this democratic exercise, helping us unpack key aspects around the 8th presidential and National Assembly elections. Also just giving us reflections there from last night's final results announcement, as heard there from the ECN. President-elect is Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, walking away with 57% of the total votes. I think we must congratulate Namibians for coming out and, of course, casting their votes in these elections. Out of the 1.4 million registered voters, 1.1 million registered at the, showed up at the polls. To stay with us, we have more interviews coming your way.